What's the latest, everyone? Welcome to the latest edition of the In the Paint Show presented by Ballislife and the first one of 2022. Happy New Year's to everybody. Ronnie Flores here with your co-host, Ani Umana. Ani, welcome aboard. It's great to have you on.
Oh man, it's great to be on. When you hit me about it, I was like, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like on the Balls Life Network with Ronnie, we built a friendship over the past couple of years. So no, for sure. Like I was excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, this is a great time. We're obviously in a new year, so a lot of things are happening. Obviously, we still have COVID happening
Yeah.
for the third high school basketball season. Obviously, that's our bread and butter, but we're going to talk about a lot of different topics. Today, we're going to hit on a few other topics. Wanted to bring up something, a little off the cuff, and it's very important, I think, to basketball too. And the kids that follow us and read about the stuff we do and follow our scouting or whatnot. But one of the topics I want to bring up is a bad breakup. Antonio Brown is no longer with the Bucs. The 33-year-old, 7-time Pro Bowler, this past week, last week's game, left the field in the third quarter versus the Jets. Now, this is just in the middle of a game. Appeared upset and removed his pads and his compression shirt, threw him into the stands, made a big, it was kind of a big scene, and he simply left the stadium. That's not something that happens all the time.
Right.
Coach
Right.
Bruce Arians made a statement that he's no longer on the team, and as of Monday, you were probably listening to this toward the middle or the end of the week, but on Monday, last Monday, the Bucs hadn't heard from him, and he had already made the statement that he wasn't on the team. He had no regrets. He said he wished them well. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl the previous year. And I want to get your take. He had some issues he had 9 seasons with the Steelers. He was released before even playing a game with the Raiders. He played one game with the Patriots. And then some rape and sexual assault allegations by a former trainer kind of came out and went public, and they let him go. Just as he did it with the Raiders, he kind of published some social media posts, kind of like, I don't know if he's laughing or celebrating, like, I ain't on the team no more. It wasn't like a big deal to him. He's almost like it was kind of a little bit rehearsed. What's your take overall there? And obviously, like I said, this is not his first incident, but it's still shocking to see somebody just walk off the football field.
When I saw the video of him taking off his uniform and throwing it at the stands, I was like, man, this dude's crazy. But I wasn't surprised either. Like like you say, he has a long rap sheet of just incidents. I mean, he didn't show up to practice at first with the Raiders because of the helmet grievance. Just a lot of things. But with the Bucs, he just made a post and he was just happy to be gone. It's almost that he feels that he can do whatever he wants and still get another opportunity. I know there's been some reports or people have been going on social media about him needing mental help. And I just think, honestly, that's not really the case. I think it's just more so he gets away what he wants. We talked about what, since 2019, 2018? Throwing a football at one of his teammates when he with the Steelers and just on and on and on, but he keeps having opportunities.
Yeah, he's had the opportunities. And like you said, he's a smart guy. I mean, he knows, I guess, his value as a football player. Obviously, that's changing. Again, that's the biggest point we're trying to make here is, as young basketball players and young athletes, the value you have can change very fast. Like people only put up with so much for so long. He's 33 years old. Again, I always look at it like this. I like AB as a player. I played DB in high school, so I'm always watching receivers. And if you ain't Jerry Rice or Randy Moss, I'll find somebody to replace you.
Right.
You know what
right. Absolutely.
Like, there's only one Jerry Rice, and there's only one Randy Moss. Like, now there's a few, I like Steve Largent, I like him, Sterling Sharp, and a few other guys that were like obviously Hall of Fame players. But
those two are like the pinnacle of receivers.
Like Jerry Rice, if you cut him in half, he's still 2 Hall of Fame players.
Right.
His numbers, he would still make the Hall of Fame half and half. So like AB is not that. So that's my point. And our point is, the guy maybe running out of options. So I'll just ask you straight up, Ani, is he played his last down in the NFL?
I would hope so, but I don't believe so.
Wow.
I think next year,
Yeah.
in the middle of the season, when you have injuries and you're a team that's contending for a Super Bowl or a deep playoff run needs a receiver. He's going to be in shape. He's going to work out. We're going to look at it like, hey, we just got to deal with him for like 7 weeks or 10 weeks. Can we deal with AB for 10 weeks and
Wow.
potentially win a Super Bowl? I believe someone's going to give him opportunity. Obviously not this year. I don't think anybody is.
Yeah. There might not even be the rules for him to be playing. I don't know if you could pick him up just for the playoffs. I'm not sure, but
Right.
yeah, you're right. They're not going to put him into their system now as on the eve of the playoffs. And obviously, we have 18 weeks in the NFL now instead of 17, which is crazy in itself.
Yeah.
There's another week in the NFL. Obviously, the NFL used to be a 14-week season. Then it went to a 16-week season about 30 years ago. So we have an 18th week. And like you said, I wanted to bring up the thing about people are offering their prayers and well wishes, and that's great as it relates to mental health. But I think you kind of touched on this. I want to touch on a little bit more. We got these Twitter doctors. Is it disrespectful to AB and to true mental health sufferers to just start saying mental health without any qualifications behind it? Like, is that a diss to like people that really have mental issues?
I believe it is because it's a serious thing. Mental health is a serious issue, especially among athletes. I think AB needs a mentor or some guidance, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's disrespectful for people that actually have are diagnosed with something compared to Antonio Brown, who we're just seeing him just kind of act a fool, and we don't know.
And some people mentioned to me, I kind of got on Twitter about it a little bit, and I'm like, hey, they're like, hey, Ronnie, well, he doesn't know he needs help for men to have, mental health issues. That's a valid argument. Like,
Absolutely.
You may not know, like, the state you're in if you have some issues with mental health. And of course, we're talking about a guy who may have CTE issues with football players. All football players can have that issue. Everybody points back to that hit he took with the Steelers against Vontaze Burfict from the Bengals, hit him in the head. But my point is even bigger, is if you don't know that you have mental health issues, you should put yourself in a position where somebody will come to you and say, hey, bro, I love you. You need help. Ani, I love you. You need help. Or intervene on your behalf or support you. What I notice is that if you're a Bucs player or a Bucs personnel, now somebody might have said something under their breath or, hey, AB, nobody was stopping him. That's the one thing I know. Nobody gave a shit that he left. I didn't see anybody going over there trying to hug him. Hey, come back, bro. It ain't worth it. I just like it. Game on. We're going to play the next. It's third down, and we're going to like continue on. That's right. That's the problem I have, or that's the point I'll try to make. If you can't get the help you want necessarily, because he has the resources to get the help. There's thousands of people out there who don't have no resources to get help. He's got plenty of money and plenty of resources to get help on that team. They have a full medical staff. The NFL has a medical staff, but nobody's vouching for him. I don't see anybody saying, hey, I'm going to bat to do it for him, or like, hey, bro, put your arm around his shoulder and be like, hey, man, I got you. I want to help you. So that was my bigger point.
Absolutely. And just anyone in the circle too, talk to him, say, hey, I mean, if you're one of his best friends, say, hey, man, I think you really need some help. You need to come, you need to see somebody and just see what was going on, because you don't want to see if that's your friend. I'm not questioning like his friends, but if that's someone that you truthfully care about, not just in the football field, but beyond it, that, you will go to him and tell him and say, hey, and urge it pretty strongly,
Yeah.
Like I'm like, honestly, for some of Antonio Brown was my friend, like that was my best friends. Even if he didn't listen to me and we lost our friendship, I would at least, just knowing that I care for him, I would tell him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense. And, we don't want to dwell on it, but we're trying to bring some points that younger kids can use if they're ever in that position. Absolutely. If they ever, in the basketball realm, if your problems, everybody has problems, but your talent obviously has to outweigh your problems. But even at that level, you can only have so many of them where people are going to move on. So we'll see what happens. We'll come back to that and see if he does ever play again. I'm gonna remember. I'm gonna be like, oh, Ani's telling me that he's back on the roster. So, that's gonna be interesting. Let's move on to another topic. Similar topic, a little different. Kevin Porter and the Rockets. Let's talk a little bit about that. And obviously, Christian Wood wasn't involved in an incident. So last weekend, Kevin Porter basically left the arena, kind of a little bit like AB, but he left the arena at halftime in a game with Denver. I guess reports are coming out. He had a confrontation with assistant coach John Lucas, and John obviously said some things to him, and he said some things to Christian Wood as well. They probably didn't like it so much, but Woods was benched for the game because he failed to show up for the Rockets' daily COVID testing. I'm sure the NBA guys get tested all the time on a daily basis, or at least on every practice. So during the game, Woods kind of looked uninterested in checking in the game. It seemed like, Stephan Silas, wanted him to go in the game at some point, and he was like, nah, I'm cool. Or like he just didn't react very strongly to that. So Coach Silas decided to suspend him for last Monday's game against the 76ers, which they predictably took a big loss, obviously. So, Ani, questions here. Again, we'll jump on this real quick. And again, it's kind of relates to AB. It kind of relates to what we're talking about in general, accountability and that kind of thing. Is Stephan Silas in a no-win situation here? Will he last to see things turn around in Houston?
Well, they weren't winning anyways.
They're not a very good team anyway.
Yeah, they're not very good this year. So, I mean, he's in a no-win, but I think establishing, some rules and people understanding that, what he's not going to go for is a huge thing for the Rockets to grow throughout the years. Do I think he'll be there throughout? I don't think so. But it's not obviously it's not an NBA draft discussion, but how they draft, it's going to be big in the next year or two. How they progress from this year to next year, and then the following year. I give it about 2 to 3 seasons, and then you've seen this before. Like he may be the coach that kind of gets him going some, and then they hire a big name coach to make him go to that next step. But I don't see him seeing it all the way through. And I think it was a win regardless. I mean, they're going to lose anyways.
Yeah, they're losing.
But I think he established just some discipline, especially with those young guys, since they're such a young group, that those young guys understand what they can and can't do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like you said, I think the leverage is with the Rockets here. Obviously, John Lucas is well-respected. There may not be a guy more respected amongst guys who are mentors to NBA players. We know that. We both know him. We know his background. He's dealt with working with a lot of players to help him get on the right track. This has been for 30 years, even before he was a coach of Cleveland or a head coach in the NBA. He obviously played as well. But I say they have mucho leverage, like you say, because, hey, guys, look in the mirror. We suck. We're not on the way to a 60-win season. So what do you think? What do you think you're doing here? Like, if a coach is addressing you or addressing your effort, addressing your play, I mean, you're a professional. That's part of being a professional. And like you said, if the Rockets were historically bad last year, and of course they drafted Jalen Green number 2. Obviously, Cade went number 1, and Evan Mobley went to the Cavs number 3. That's going to be talked about for years.
Oh yeah.
It's just, and I've seen a lot of Rockets fans be like, "Yo, if you don't support Jalen Green and the Rockets, like, get a new team because he's doing what he can."
Absolutely.
And the team is, like you said, they're not very good. They were not very good. They're historically bad, and they're young. So, like you said, Coach Silas has a tough situation. So I guess to put you on the spot a bit, was bringing in Woods a mistake, or was it the best move at the time?
It was the best move at the time. I mean, he had a pretty good season the previous year.
Right.
So I thought it was a good move, just adding more talent, especially young talent. Now seeing his immaturities, obviously now you're kind of looking at it. And he had played 8 minutes, went 0 for 4 that game against Denver. But at the time, I thought it was a really good move. I thought them going to the youth movement, Christian Wood, especially having a good season last year, was someone that made sense. But now you question it. Obviously, there's still more season, and hopefully, they can grow up from this. But it is tricky now.
Yeah, it definitely is. Obviously, KP is 21 years old. Jalen Green is probably a little younger. Jalen Green was young for his class, and Woods is only 26. So with that in mind, what do you think is the Rockets' next move? You kind of mentioned just pick good in the draft, or do they have to make a move before the deadline? What?
I think you make a move before the deadline. It just needs to be draft assets. I think something that obviously Boston did a great thing when Danny Ainge was there, just with collecting draft assets, and they had a chance. I mean, people can argue that they were a Gordon Hayward. When he broke his leg, if that didn't happen, they may have an NBA title. So I think it's all about acquiring assets and drafting really well, and even drafting, and then being able to improve and have those draft assets, and then be able to trade them and then get a superstar to kind of build. But I just think the next step is just, if you're going to trade before the deadline, I think you just need more draft. You need more draft picks, and then you be able to potentially get some veteran leadership through the free agency market, and then just kind of go from there. But they're going to need they're going to need a cornerstone basketball player, but they're also going to need veterans to help build those guys up, like Jalen Green or whoever they draft next. I think that's going to be important.
That makes sense because again, like you said, they're young. I do think if they're investing heavily in Jalen Green, which seems like he's on the right path so far, that they need to bring in some veteran around him. Maybe they thought they had that a little bit, but like you said, their talent level was so bad. they had to grab Christian Wood. You're right. I mean, this was just watching the Rockets last year was just putrid. And my big concern right now is that Kevin, if you think Kevin Porter is going to be your point guard, that's an issue I have. That if you're going to go long term and win 50 games, go deep in the playoffs, they're going to have to do something there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. He's obviously playing a lot of on the ball, whether you call that a point guard or not. I don't think it matters anymore.
A lot.
It doesn't really matter no more. That's just kind of where we are in basketball. But that's very good points. We'll see what happens with AB and KP, and kind of want to bring something up off the cuff a little bit. Oh, in college football, we always had a great college football season, and Alabama is going to be playing Georgia in the title game here and on January 13th. Obviously, we're waiting for the buildup of that. Alabama's in the title game. I think it was 9th time in 13 years or 9th time in 12 years. It's unbelievable run, kind of like a John Wooden type of run. But at the Rose Bowl, Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard, who've been on College Game Day for a long time, kind of made some comments. There's a morning game. Rose Bowl's not really a big game. Doesn't have. Now, the Rose Bowl is a great bowl, like no doubt about it. I've been before. The weather is beautiful. It's a great bowl, but it's not involved in the college championship this year. It's a little off the radar, obviously, with the college football playoff. But Herbstreit mentioned that, again, he played at Ohio State in the late 80s. He's trying to get to the Rose Bowl. Desmond Howard's playing in Michigan. He did play in the Rose Bowl. They lost to Washington when he was a wide receiver and won the Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. But he mentioned that the players don't love the game. They're not invested in the game. And then Desmond made the follow-up comment that the players are entitled. Wanted to get your take on that real quick. And then we're talking about college football, but it transfers over to college basketball, obviously. So what's your take there on those quick take on those comments?
I think there's some truth to it. I think, like you say, it translates to college basketball. There aren't a whole lot of kids that truthfully just love the game. It's a little bit more of a business, obviously with talent. But I think just to kind of generalize, say the kids don't love the game, I will say that's not true. I believe there are a good amount of kids that love it, but I also think there are a good amount of kids that don't love it either. That just kind of look at it as a business or just a talent. But I also go even a step further and say, the kids don't love it. Why? Like, what is the reason for that? Why are they entitled? Who is making them feel entitled? And those are people that are above them.
That's adults. I would say that's adults.
Yeah.
So I get to your point. So are you kind of saying that they don't love it? In essence, they may love the social aspect, the popularity. Honestly, let's be honest. The girls that like basketball players and football players. Is that what you're speaking of when you say they don't love it?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I mean. It's just
Yeah,
it's the attention that
social.
brings to it. I think
Yeah,
people use the sport
yeah,
to help them with their other career, like
yeah,
if that's more into like entertainment industry. Be like, I mean,
yeah,
that's just a reality now.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
see a lot of kids now that post every day on Instagram
Oh God,
of
I
their
can't keep up
highlights.
with it. I can't keep up with it.
You already
Too
know.
much for
So
me. You know what I mean? Like I get what you're saying. It's almost like a business, and like you said, it's entertainment. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. High school basketball is a business. It's a
mhm,
big business, and the kids are kind of gaining on that. And in almost every state, they can sign an endorsement deal through
right.
name, image, and likeness. So it's only going to get if Hurst Street and Des think that the kids are not bought in and entitled, it's only going to get worse
Yeah.
since NIL passed. I think so. Very
Absolutely.
interesting comments, that they made. And another thing, we got to talk about it real quick before we jump on our main topic, which is we're going to talk about the holiday hoop season. But the Raiders, again, we've already talked about AB. We know what happened with the Raiders 2 months ago with the totally, tragic incident with one of their players. And then last week, we had a player, a cornerback, rookie cornerback, and
Mhm.
he gets arrested, Nate Hobbs, 22-year-olds for a misdemeanor DUI last weekend on Monday night, middle of the night, Monday
Right.
morning, Sunday morning night, whatever you want to call it. Is it is this just no excuses? You're a professional, or is it just going to continue to happen with the Raiders and any pro team in in Las Vegas? I mean, I spend my time in Vegas. I have my own thoughts. I want to get your thoughts. Or is it bullshit? You're a grown adult. You can call an Uber. You can get a homie to get your ride or a teammate. What's your take there?
I think when you're a young millionaire
Yeah,
in Las Vegas, it's just what's gonna come with it. I mean, I
yeah,
know when I go to Vegas, like
yeah,
this summer, like my first nights were fun.
yeah,
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
yeah.
And man, look, I could only imagine you had making a whole lot of money. You're
Oh,
21, 22, and you're in Las Vegas.
yeah, yeah,
You kind of thinking that, ain't not gonna happen to me.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I just think it's just one of the things where you just got a lot of money and you're in Vegas.
Yeah.
Just
Here's
what
my thing. If I'm Davis and I know the history of the Raiders, I know what's going on just this season. I mean, and they're trying to make the playoffs for the second time in 20 years
yeah,
next
that's
Sunday. I
right.
mean, they gotta concentrate on the game. They gotta win Sunday night.
Right.
This upcoming Sunday night, as you listen to this podcast, it's a huge game for the whole. Make the playoffs in the first season in their new stadium. That's a
That's a
positive.
that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that's a big thing for them. But if I'm them, I hire somebody from Uber or Lyft to be on call 24/7. Create an app. All you got to do is press the app, and that dude shows up to give you a ride. Like, just pay him because you're saving yourself a lot of headache. Like,
Right.
I mean, I know that the NFL has like free ride share. They have, but no play. Like you said, a player with $100,000 car is not going to call a ride share. He's going to
No, no, they're
you
gonna
know,
drive. They're gonna drive in their car. I
yeah,
actually love that idea.
yeah,
Just hire somebody, have an app where they just
yeah.
press the button and they're
Somebody
there.
picks him up. It's just
Yeah,
end of story. Just let's hope something happens. I mean, this is a bad story. It could have been worse. He obviously was
yeah,
asleep at the wheel. That's when you know you're not really in control of your own what you're up to when you're sleeping at the wheel. Like
right.
that you just had too much to drink, or nobody's telling you, hey, Ani, you need to cool. We're cool. Let's get some water. Let's
Yeah, yeah.
let's go walk or
Dump some
something.
water on them. Just throw some water.
Yeah, it's just not. Come on, man. That's not good. So.
No.
Whoa, well, that's been a lot of things that's happened. Now, let's jump into the high school holiday tournaments. Obviously, the big news is coming out of your way, out of Texas.
Yeah.
Uh, number one, Duncanville got to the number one spot by being Montverde at the buzzer at Hoop Hall West in early December. We knew, and I put them to number one after that win, but I knew one of the reasons I put them to number one is because to stay number one was going to be difficult. They got to win the UIL Class 6A title. They
Mhm.
got to get through Richardson. They got to get through some other good teams. And obviously, the Whataburger tournament's been around for 64 years. It's one of the best tournaments in the country. And they ended up playing Richardson in the title game. Ani, why don't you tell us what happened? and then what transpired from there.
So that Richardson Duncanville game when that happened to Mansfield Legacy, that was the game, everybody in Texas and really in the country were kind of been waiting on.
Yeah.
And it was a good game throughout, like 1 to 2 possession game throughout. Casey Wallace, he's coming strong, finishing, doing what he does. Then Duncanville just compilation of, Ronald Holland, Cam Barnes, Eric Demings making threes. Ashton Hardaway, they just keep making their runs as well. So at the end of the third quarter, like probably a minute left in the third quarter, there was like some rumblings going on, and then you see Anthony Black going to the locker room, and we're like, man, what's going on?
What's happening there? Yeah.
So a player I know, he texted, he said, "Hey, Anthony Black is cleared." So we're in the meeting.
What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. So us meeting tape, I said, "Hey, they just told me Anthony Black got cleared." And I'm like, what? And so it's like just a frenzy. No one's even paying attention to the game, right? Like,
yeah, that's got to be kind of like a Twilight Zone, like what is going on here?
Right. And even like you even see the people on the bench at Duncanville that are just turning back, like, wait, what's up? Like Anthony Black, Jennifer, she stand up, she's excited. So you're like, oh wow. So we know he's going to the locker room, but you're still trying to figure out why he hasn't came out yet.
Yeah. Okay.
And so someone was like, "Oh, he needs some size 14 shoes." so because he has some Jordans on.
Yeah.
And so he just keeps the Jordans he had on, and he comes out there. So in the fourth quarter, Duncanville's down 5, and Anthony Black checks in the game.
Wow.
And it was just so crazy. Everyone stand up cheering. Like the Richardson coach, he calls the timeout, calms them down. So
the Richardson coach is probably thinking, "What the world is going on right now?"
You got the players that Richardson say he's ineligible. What's he doing? So
because if you're the Richardson coach and kudos to him, you got to calm your team down. Like, yo, we're in a game. We want to win this game.
Absolutely,
let's not lose track here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So so after the timeout, Duncanville has on the baseline. They run a play for AB. It gets stolen, and Richardson goes and they didn't convert. But anyways, like Duncanville makes a run, they tie it going, and then it goes into overtime. So in overtime, Case and Wallace just took over. Just his shot creation abilities improve so much every time I see him, and Richardson ultimately won. But that Anthony Black game, I don't know if you're like familiar like WWE wrestling. You ever seen like the guys in the getting beat up and stuff, and then like they play the entrance music, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin will come out. Like when I was a kid, he just beat up everybody. That's what I felt like this Anthony Black situation was gonna be. Like just a wrestler coming out just beating the crap out of everybody.
Yeah. You think he's gonna check in the game and score like 20 points in the fourth quarter? Yeah.
Right.
With music blaring, like music coming in. Yeah. So just to give people some background, Anthony Black did play in the Montverde game. Obviously he was originally ruled ineligible by the UIL after transferring over from Coppell, Texas, from Coppell High School. Then his parents filed an injunction to allow him to play for Duncanville, and then they won that case, or the injunction was granted. And then the UIL came back and appealed that ruling. So then he didn't play in a non-league game or a non-conference, non-district game, and then the 3 games leading up to the title game at the Whataburger. So he didn't play for 4 games, basically. Right. And then we had the Stone Cold Steve Austin moment. he goes to the back and then comes out and checks in the game. So what I gather is, and I saw some of the highlights, it was 60-58, like you said. Casey Wallace is making some big plays, and then Ashton Hardaway has a chance to tie or win. He shoots a 3, it's off. Black gets a rebound, but by that time the game clock was already at 0, or did he get the shot off and it missed?
He got the shot off right before the buzzer. So like when Ashton Hardaway missed the shot, everyone thought it was game, but there was a little bit of time left. Maybe put it up, and he could have tied it. It just missed. Yeah, it would have counted if he would have made that.
Oh, that would have been nuts to them going to a second overtime, hit and tie the game. So Richardson wins 60-58. Again, it's not over. As I said, and I've said this on this pod many times before, winning UIL Texas Class 6A is like as hard as anything to do.
Absolutely.
You got to win basically 6 or 7 games. against good teams. And by the third game, it's a tough game. And then the regional final is always tough. And then you go to the state Final Four. New Jersey tournament champions is pretty good. A few others, but there's not many better. So, I mean, if Duncanville's going to finish number one or had a chance to finish number one, they were going to deserve it. Wasn't like, oh, they just got to number one by luck or by fluke. No, it wasn't anything like that. So, Ani, correct me if I'm wrong. They still have a chance to meet again.
Oh, they do. In the regional finals, actually, I believe in the Final Four they can meet again.
It would be in the Final Four on the same side of the bracket.
Mm-hmm. And so that game will be in the still scheduled for the Alamo Dome in San Antonio.
In March.
I haven't seen the Alamo Dome fully packed.
Yeah,
like fully packed. I think this was a game to make it fully packed.
Fully packed, yeah. It'll be a huge game if they get there. And like I said, Texas state playoffs are kind of like the NCAA Final Four in that sometimes the two best teams are on the same side of the bracket. It's not always like the best team meet in the final.
Right.
Sometimes the semifinal is just as big as the final.
Mm-hmm.
Just because based on the regionality, which is a lot different in California. People don't understand California. They're like, I thought that team lost. I'm like, no, that's the sectionals. They're back in the regional. It's way different.
Okay, yeah, because I never really got a full grasp of how it is in California.
Yeah, I'll explain it one day. It's
okay.
As this season rolls along, we'll get into explaining it. It's a crazy process. We'll have some guests on to talk about it too. But
okay.
Yeah, that in Texas, it's basically win or go home once you reach the state playoffs. So not like that in California. So that was a huge thing. And some other big events that happened. Obviously, the City of Palms, Montverde Academy won that. There was 13 Fab 50 ranked teams in that. Montverde came out on top. Just based on what happened, Ani, were you surprised that Oak Hill made it to the final and played them within 5 points? They've been kind of up and down. What's your take there?
Oh, yeah. I was actually kind of surprised that Oak Hill was, had the showing that they did. I know they, like you said, they kind of been struggling a little bit. It's not the, they haven't been as, winning like we expect Oak Hill to but, they were clicking at the right time,
Yeah.
And you can just tell with the play, just some of the stuff I've been watching, and being able to watch it, like they were just clicking at the right time, moving the basketball, hitting shots, collectively playing defense. The Montverde game, that would be the second time they played Montverde, right?
Yeah, and they lost kind of handily the first time, so they played him within 5 this time.
So, I always believe it's just hard to beat teams, twice, 2-3 times. I think, when you get blasted by a team before, your pride kind of comes in. And you want to go beat them. You want to show they weren't who they showed at that moment. But it was definitely surprising because they just kind of been up and down this season. But it seems like they're kind of hitting a stride and they're peaking at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, they beat IMG in the semifinal, which is a big win for them. They IMG has split with Oak Hill as well, and then in the other semifinal, Milton made it to the semifinal, which is surprising. A little bit surprising. They don't have two players they thought they have at the beginning of the season because they're involved in a serious legal matter that happened like right as the season was getting underway. That's just like, whoa. So it kind of threw Milton off a little bit. Milton has 5 losses, but they're still a good team. Now, locally, they may not be ranked as high, but for some of the wins they had for me, I had to put them in the Fab 50 this week. And again, they may not stay there, but they've been up and down. But they've lost to Pebblebrook, Bookmar, Montverde, IMG, and Bishop O'Connell. Now, crazy, they go down to the Beach Ball Classic after they make it to the finals. And, when they're at the Beach Ball, they're not at full strength because, again, they had the 2 players involved in the legal matter.
Right.
Seriously. And then, so they have football players, so they don't have no depth. But when they have LT Overton, he's like a defensive end. And he's not just any defensive end. He's like the best defensive end in the country.
Right.
He's like Lawrence Taylor, So, like, he plays basketball, and he made such a big difference at the City of Palms. Then they get into beach ball, and he's not playing, which is after the City of Palms. I guess he's resting, or they he's getting ready for the rest of the season. And they lose in the finals to Bishop O'Connell, 71-4. I mean, they get blasted. So it's like LT just the secret sauce, or they just don't have enough inside without him.
Yeah, I just think they don't have enough inside without him.
Yeah, and he's kind of like a Julius Peppers.
Yeah.
Everything they need inside. So it's like it's just crazy. Like, and you know, I always say great teams always have a football player. Great high school teams, there's some football player that just helps on the bench, makes a big impact in practice. It almost always happens, you know, and especially in a
Absolutely.
public school. It's like,
Absolutely, especially in the public school, like
yeah,
the big time football player that plays basketball
yeah,
seems to be an impactful basketball player just with his athleticism and everything.
yeah, and his mentality and what he brings to the table. So, very interesting set of results out west. I went to a couple tournaments. Bishop Gorman won both of them. Bishop Gorman out of Nevada, a team you're very familiar with, Faith Family.
Yeah.
The Class 4A front runners. They're a terrific team. And so Faith Family was in that Tark. Liberty of Nevada played a terrific game to beat them in the semifinal. And then Liberty had a 19-point lead on Gorman right before the half. And then somebody on the team, Eli Bradley, hit a big three-pointer, cut it to 16, and they won in the second half. So they raced a 19-point deficit.
Wow.
So then they won in double overtime on Junie Mobley's jumper. I mean, they hit a bunch of big shots. Now, a lot of things happen in the course of a game. Obviously, it's a game of runs and a game of emotion. Gorman plays really well at home. Tark, the big bracket in Tark is played at Bishop Gorman. So,
okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a home tournament, but it's a great tournament for them, and they usually have some good out of state teams and some California teams. So, you know, they come back again. Junie Mobley's 214. They have Jason Richardson's son, Jace Richardson. He's another 224. I said 214. I meant 224, obviously. So they have a good young nucleus, and they're guards, and they're guard oriented, and they play really well on the perimeter. So they go to Torrey Pines, which is in San Diego, and that's been a historically good tournament over the years. Stephon Marbury's played in it, Al Harrington. Mm-hmm. The list goes on and on. Torrey Pines usually has a couple out of state teams as well. And this year, DeMatha was supposed to go, just as they went to Hoop Hall West, but COVID kicked in. They were supposed to have Iona Prep, I believe, or St. Peter's of New York. Mm-hmm. They didn't go. So it became a little bit more local, but Faith Family still went. Now, I talked to their coach, Coach Thomas, and he mentioned, I go, well, what'd you guys do? Did you guys stay around and go to the beach, or did you guys go back to Texas? He goes, no, we went back to Texas for Christmas. Then they came out again to San Diego afterwards. So they drew Campolindo in the first round because of the way all the drops and all the teams that dropped and schedules had to be changed. So Campolindo is the best team in Northern California, led by St. Mary's commit Aiden Mahaney. But they're kind of like the little engine that could. If you saw them play in warm-up lines, you're like, Faith Family's going to beat them by 20. But they're just a well-oiled machine, the type of team that played together since junior high. So they have all their they have great chemistry out the roof. They were missing two starters, and so it was like, boy, they have their hands full. But it was a great game, and Faith Family pulled it out by like 2 possessions, 5-point game. So Faith Family rolled to the final, where they met Bishop Gorman, and once again, Faith Family had a 13-point lead late in the third quarter, and then here it goes. Hit a couple threes. They didn't close out on the hedge on a three on Junie Mobley. It was a big shot. So they got back in the game, and then, came down to the end, and Bishop Gorman pulled out the win. So Darion Williams, they're 222, small forward. He's kind of strong. He's the one guy that could handle the physicality of Faith Family and their best players. Like, he was the kind of guy that they needed that because they're, like I said, they're a young group. Mm-hmm. And obviously Faith Family has, Jaden Toppin and some big guys inside that can really do some things. Mm-hmm. And they were able to obviously offset that with some of their perimeter quickness. Their 3-point shooting as a team is really good. They have some really good shooters. Ryder Isaldes comes to mind. The Mobley and Darion Williams, just kind of a guy that does a little bit of jack of all trades, kind of like a point forward. So he was the MVP of both events. And I want to talk a little bit about Faith Family. Talk a little bit about their UT Arlington signing they have. He's a terrific forward. And I mean, Did he just come on late, or are people just sleeping on him because they look at him and say, oh, he can't move his feet well enough to defend at the mid-major to high level? What's going on there?
Yeah, Brandon Walker, he kind of came on pretty late.
Okay.
He was always interesting because he's about 6'6", he has a big frame.
Yeah.
When he was younger, I used to kind of be a little turned off by him because he used to shoot the ball all the time and would not pass. So and I'd be like, man, when does Brandon Walker pass the ball? So he's gotten better just through the years. I thought this past summer, you see him kind of really making that stride. And then at the TABC, like that June live period, he played really, really well. I just think him coming on so strong and late, the coaches were like, do we believe this or not? And I'm just like, honestly, he's, potential high major level prospect. I mean, he's starting to,
starting to show something. Yeah.
And UTA got a steal. UTA got a steal. He's going to be really, really good for them. I think they may go to Missouri Valley next year, but whatever leagues they stay in the Sun Belt or whatever, he's going to be really good for them. I mean, I've seen UTA play. He's a player that can help them right now. And they're 2-0 in conference right now. But I mean, I think he's still good frame, can shoot it, can handle it, kind of can be a bully in the paint with mismatches, and just gets a lot done for Faith family. And Jordan Walsh is having a terrific season at Link Year Prep. And then obviously they got TJ Caldwell, Ole Miss commit. But I think Jordan Walsh leaving has kind of allowed him to take more of a leadership role and really show what all he can do.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling the people at Tark. I was like, because Link was at Tark. Mm-hmm. They won, and obviously Link is moving up in the Fab 50. They're still undefeated. Link is now 21-0 on the season. So, they obviously got talent and they're rolling. But I told people, I said, hey, this is a good team. I go, they lost Jordan Walsh, but they're good. My guy who did really well, I thought, was Isaiah Jones, 6'1". He played really good down in San Diego. Played a little better at San Diego than he did in Vegas, I thought. And the young guy, Dorian Owuchekio. I don't want to.
I can't say his last name either.
He's a big guy, but
I say Big Dorian.
Yeah, Big Dorian he's a prospect, and I like Jaden Toppin. I think he's going to be a really good prospect in the 224 class. So they got a good team. And the reason why they didn't really bump into the Fab 50 this week, it's kind of like, again, when you lose or beat to somebody, you want to them to do good, because that obviously helps you, right? So
absolutely,
Faith family lost to Kimball early, lost to North Little Rock. That's no problem. North Little Rock is having a great season, and obviously they're the one team that beat Richardson. We'll go over the Fab 50 here in a minute, and make sure to check it out on ballislife.com. But then their two other losses are to Liberty and Bishop Gorman. Again, they had that big lead on Liberty, and when they won the third place game at Tark, so they won after they lost to Liberty, and obviously Liberty was in line to be a nationally ranked team, and then they blew a bad game after Christmas, so it kind of hurt Faith family. So Faith family has those 4 losses, but if Liberty starts winning again, or Liberty beats Gorman later this month in January, they play on January 27th. I mean, Faith family could be right there. They're obviously the favorite for it, and obviously they got to win Class 4A to stay in. Yeah, they're not. If they lose there, they're obviously
they can't be in there. They should win 4A. It was a little weird last year. They lost to Argyle, I think, prior to going to the championship. But I don't think that will happen again.
Yeah, exactly. They're a really good team. So I want to talk about a couple young players, and there was obviously a lot of good players. But Gorman's Chris Newuli, 225. Now, obviously, 225 rankings haven't really came out yet. Obviously, some guys have big reputations, but this guy's a 6'8" shot blocker. He made some huge plays at Tarkanian and a few plays in the Faith family game. He's just an elite shot blocker. His offense is not, polished yet, but he's going to be a big-time player. Have you seen any 225s yet that are on your radar that people should have on the radar? Or is it more like, really good teams are not playing freshmen right now?
No, for sure. At Waxahachie, Parker Jefferson, who's been playing really good, was at the Pangos soft camp and had a really good showing. What I liked about him, he kind of reminds me of Drew Timmy at the same time.
Yeah.
He can stretch it out and shoot it better than Drew.
Wow.
But Drew was just such a back-to-basket menace at the time. But just the versatility overall, you kind of see Waxahachie starts him. They throw the
Wow.
ball at him. I mean, there was a time when they played Richardson at the Whataburger.
Yeah.
They threw to him. Case and guarded him.
Yeah.
In the post, and I'm like, they're really gonna throw in the ball, like when Case and generally guards. So when people are kind of like, well, I'm gonna
Back
take
off a
that
little
back.
bit. Yeah.
And he went right at Kaysen, couple post ups, Kaysen blocked it, but he'll get back and he'll finish it. So like he doesn't have any fear. That's what I do like about him. He's not most big men, especially that young, will be intimidated. He's like he accepts challenges. That's also just with his skill set. But you definitely see that he has a chance. Den Geyer start 2 freshmen and Jeremiah Green and Jordan Lowry, who Jeremiah is a really good shot creator, can hit shots from deep and get to the basket, shows Paul's mid-range game, and Jordan Lowry's like more your pure point, really impacts games just with his defense and it's just his facilitating and creating shots for others. So there's been some 25s in this area that have been playing really well. And those three just really stand out.
Yeah, I got 3 that stand out too that were at the Classic at Damien, which Crean Lutheran had won their division at Tark, which is the 2nd division, and they were going to be in the final at the Damien in the 2nd division, but the final was going to be Corona Centennial, which you are well aware of, because they lost to Duncanville and they beat Kimball, I believe.
Yes.
Corona Centennial with their great quartet of players, 3 223s and 1 222, and Donovan Dent going to New Mexico, he's a great steal. But so they were in the final and they were going to play Riverside Poly, which is a public school in the Inland Empire as well. But that team had a drop right on the eve of the final. So they just kind of played Crean Lutheran in, I guess, an out of bracket game, like a showcase game. Because again, they were in 2 separate brackets.
Oh, okay.
And Centennial beat them to remain as a 1-loss team. Centennial is now going into this week 12-1 with the only loss to Duncanville, and Sierra Canyon 14-1 with only the loss to Duncanville. But Riverside Poly has a freshman, Braden Burries, about 6'4", just moves well without the ball, strong body, kind of like an off guard, really polished, can score around the rims, fearless. So there was 3 great freshmen in that Classic at Damien. The other one was Long Beach Poly, which was going to play as a team, Crean Lutheran in that 2nd division final. They beat San Joaquin Memorial and their Fresno State commit JoJo Hunter in the semifinal. Giovanni Ruff, again, he's about 6'4", 6'5". His dad played at Long Beach State. I believe his mom played at Long Beach State too in the early 2000s. And he's a great young player, polished. He reminds me of Kerry Kittles, the former Villanova standout. It kind of looks like him a little bit, but he reminds me of him. Scores, moves, just really polished on the baseline. Both those guys have seemed like they've played high school basketball for 2 or 3 years already. Just their demeanor and they're calm and they're not rattled by too much. It's like they know their talent level. So Braden Burries, Giovanni Ruff, and the third guy is Elzie Harrington. He plays at St. John Bosco. He's a little bit more. He's 6'5", so they're all in the 6'4", 6'5" range. He's a little bit more of a lead guard, or like what we call new age lead guard, who can score. He's advanced. He probably going into this season was like considered the top prospect in California in that 225 class. Really hasn't done anything to like dispel that. Bosco has a second guy who's more of like a Draymond Green, like point forward, jack of all trades guy, Cade Bonham. And they both play a lot. Elzie's one of their best players. He turned his ankle in their 3rd game, so he didn't play much in the last 2 games against American Fork, and then their final game was against Sheldon. But those are 3 great names to keep track of. You'll hear a lot about them in the future. It's gonna be interesting to see how who becomes the best player as a high school accolades, and who becomes the best prospect of those 3. Braden Burries, Giovanni Ruff, and Elzie Harrington. You're going to hear a lot about them. You'll probably see them at Pangos camp one day, NBA players camp. They're 4
or 5-star level guys.
Yeah, they're 4 or 5-star level guys, and they're already making an impact at the high school level. So Centennial kind of, kept the winning up. And I kind of wanted to mention that because we were talking about Duncanville. So I kind of had to break down the Fab 50 and like what's going to happen now. And like I said, go to ballislife.com to see the complete rankings. So what to do with Duncanville? Well, Duncanville, I see a lot of people out there, they're like, well, they lost. They got to be behind Richardson. But then that kind of takes not into account Richardson's loss to North Little Rock. And it's not like Duncanville lost in overtime. It's not like, it's same thing. They beat Montverde at the buzzer. So they still got to remain in front of Sierra Canyon and Centennial. And me, I've seen all three teams. I still think Duncanville's a little better than them. Seen all three teams live. And so Montverde has to jump back up to number one. Well, people say, why? Well, they're in the event that 13 other ranked teams are in.
Right.
And IMG's in that event. And if IMG beat them, but IMG didn't win that event. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it makes no, for now, that's what makes the most sense. Again, that can change, but they go one. Sunrise Christian, which is only lost to Montverde's number 2, only has 1 loss. Duncanville comes in 3. IMG with the loss to Sunrise and the Oak Hill split, which we talked about, comes in at number 4. And then number 5 is Camden, which is now 2-0, Camden, New Jersey, led by DeJuan Wagner, 223. Everybody knows about him that follows our podcast for the most part. And he's, considered one of the best, if not the best player in that class, 2-0. And then Sierra Canyon and Centennial. We mentioned Link already with Jordan Walsh in that group, 8. And then Richardson comes in 9 and Oak Hill 10. Now, Oak Hill's kind of interesting when you kind of mentioned the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. They're 13-6. They have some loss. They lost to Greensboro Day without one of their big guns. So again, when they're at, like you said, if they're playing motivated, playing together with Judah Mintz, Chris Livingston, if they're playing together, I mean, I saw them in Phoenix and AZ Compass Prep just ran right through them. I couldn't, but they just were not playing good.
Right.
So very, that's good coaching. That's good chemistry, good culture. Hey, we got to come back and play better to lose on Montverde by 5 points. So they come in, they've lost to Greensboro Day without Chris Livingston, Montverde twice, Sunrise. They split with IMG and they lost to Arizona Compass Prep. So that's 6 losses.
Against some good quality teams. I mean,
no, that's some good quality teams. The only team can look at is like, okay, Greensboro Day is nationally ranked, but they didn't have Chris Livingston in that game. I think it was at the Phenom Hoops of it. So, that kind of rounds out the top 10. We'll you can go to ballslife.com, like I said, to look at the rest of it. Make sure to download our app, check it out. Download the app so you can check out, the weekly rankings and things like that. But Ani, what do you think about the Fab 50? Is there any team that stands out to you or anything that you wanted to kind of mention as from a team wise or a player wise on one of those teams?
Yeah, definitely seen, I know Link, when they first started, they're 40th. And I know people kind of were saying some stuff on social media about it, but I completely get it. Like, they haven't really proven themselves first year. I mean, obviously what's on paper does matter, but it doesn't warrant a top 10 overall. Like, they had to work their way up, and they have. Right now they're undefeated. Jordan Walsh has been fantastic. Terrence Reed is kind of coming along. Omaha starting to kind of go into the and then just with all their pieces, like Trey Green's been kind of coming along. Like, their guard play starting to be better because that was a little shaky at first, especially like in the preseason, like in the scrimmages, because they came down here. Yeah. And just their front line just really starting to kind of gel, and Jordan's kind of been taking his own. Julian Phillips. So they're just Lincoln is really talented. They go from a team that, we've seen it so many times. I know you've seen it more than me. Yeah. That on paper they look really good, but it doesn't pan out during the season, right? Yeah. And they've done that. So another one, like just even Richardson, just seeing how they've, some of the role players have kind of stepped up for them this year. Rylan Griffin and Kaysen, but adding Timmy Jordan, who's a 2023 post. And he had a huge game against Duncanville. Before AB came to the game, I mean, they couldn't get he was getting he probably had 5 or 6 offensive rebounds. Wow. So he's, Richardson just, it's easy for last year they played against Duncanville in the Final Four at SMU, and they got trashed. And, they could have easily just kind of been like, man, look, we're not going to beat Duncanville, especially with the addition of Anthony Black. But just for them to be where they are, and they've only one loss this season against North Little Rock.
Yeah.
They've been very impressive.
Yeah, they have. And again, everybody from around the country knows about Ryland Griffin and Kaysen, but yeah, they got to have a good team. I mean, they're tough. They played, I think, Arizona Compass really close, which is hard to do. And what I gather is they just have guys that get after it and defend.
Oh man,
and yeah, like that's what you want at the high school level is guys that can get after it and defend. So they've taken some losses, but obviously they're a good team. Then they could jump back into the rankings. They're not in right now. They're more of a regional team, but that's just because of the losses. They lost to Duncanville, North Little Rock, Centennial, and then they lost to Corner Canyon. Mm-hmm. And that's a road game in Utah that our guy Glenn Smith puts on, and Duncanville was up there too after they had played Montverde. They went up to Utah and played in that event and won a road game. American Fork, I believe they beat by by about 10. So again, Duncanville's played a murderer's row. I just don't see how they can be too far down. I mean, and then like you said, Richardson's got to get knocked. But if you look at North Little Rock, I tell you some of the teams North Little Rock has beat. Let me see if I could find this here. They've beat Beaumont United, Dr. Phillips out of Orlando, who's a really good team. So it's not like, they have some good wins themselves.
Mm-hmm. No, they do.
They beat Kimball.
Yeah.
So I mean, we talked about Kimball. They beat Richardson. So, and they beat Whitney Young out of Chicago. That's a hell of a resume for an Arkansas team, obviously led by Nick Smith and their big man Khalil Ware. That's a hell of a resume for an Arkansas team. Obviously, season's not done, but just going into the new year, those are some big time wins. So,
absolutely,
yeah, Richardson's got to get bumped up for their win over Duncanville, but North Little Rock, I bumped them up too because of they beat Richardson. They're obviously pretty damn good.
Absolutely.
So North Little Rock went to 15 from 22, and then we got some undefeated teams. Glenbard West, a really good high school team out of Illinois, kind of in the suburbs outside Chicago. Calvary Christians having a really good season with Marval Allen and those guys, Marval Allen, those guys down in Florida. They only lost to Milton, which is kind of a stinker loss, but we talked about how well Milton's played at times. They're 7-1. There's hardly nobody's undefeated anymore. Let me see the teams that are undefeated are Camden, which has only played 2 games, Link Academy, and Gonzaga of DC 6-0. And obviously, they have those tough Catholic League games coming up. Bishop Gorman's 14-0. They got Durango coming up. They got still have to play Coronado and Liberty sometime this month. And Cardinal Hayes of the Bronx, New York, comes in at 24. So almost every other team has taken a loss, which is probably good for state of high school basketball. Is a good thing.
Is that normally how it is? Like,
yeah, that's normally how it is in the latest, in the past 10 years, everybody's played. And like I've said many times, shout out to the guys who've made not just the holidays good, but like Thanksgiving is now a big weekend. You gotta, if you're a top league ranked team, and you don't win on Thanksgiving, you're already starting in the hole. Now, obviously, everybody doesn't start the same. So Camden, Roselle, those teams in New Jersey, New York, they start a little bit later. Again, Camden's only 2-0, but they have some tough minds to come up. And you look at it like if Duncanville would have stayed undefeated, or even Montverde or something, I don't see Camden surpassing them. But now since they all have losses, if Camden goes undefeated, they have to beat Sierra Canyon. They got to beat some other good teams. They've already beat Roselle. They have a chance at number 1. Not saying they get there, but they definitely have a chance, especially since the teams in front of them have a loss.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it's good stuff. Wanted to touch about a little bit more about those COVID issues as we kind of close out this episode 111. These COVID issues at these tournaments. Many teams, like I said, backed out of tournaments on the West Coast. Some teams came from out of the area, and then so they just didn't come. And then some other teams played a game or two, then had a drop. What was the issue like in Texas and other places you heard about? Was there drops? Was there big issues? What happened out there?
Yeah, so it wasn't a huge issue, but so like John Paul II, who had 2023 RJ Jones and 24 Liam McNeely, You know, they played their first round game against South Grand Prairie and lost. And South Grand Prairie, by the way, has a freshman, Cameron Carroll, who's really, really talented.
Yeah.
But John Paul, they couldn't play the next game because they had some positive COVID tests, so they had to shut it down. Summer Creek out of Houston couldn't play. So I believe Waxahachie just advanced because they couldn't play. And this was in the Whataburger.
Yeah.
And then, so like, there was an event going on at the I School and at Universal Academy. There's some 2 charter schools. And Minnesota Prep, like Dream Vision Academy out of New York was supposed to come down. And Minnesota Prep or Dream Vision Academy could make it because of COVID. So there's been like some, small hits.
Yeah.
But over here, now they're strongly recommending masks, but nobody's wearing it here. But
nobody's wearing it. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't really make a huge impact on the Whataburger other than just the first rounds, and then some of like the other local events where we're supposed to have some out of town teams.
Yeah.
It did affect them.
Yeah. And John Paul came out to Vegas. They were able to play there 4 games. They made it to the final in the second division at Tark. I think it's Warren had a great tournament. RJ Jones, as you said, Liam McNeely. His name David Warren. I'm forgetting.
Oh, Gabe Warren. That's the X factor. That's the X factor for them.
Yeah, Gabe Warren played really good.
Did he?
At Tark. Kind of like just a strong wing who can score. He was lighting it up. And so they were able to get through their 4 games. And they lost in the final to Crean Lutheran, which is the team that has Victorious Miller, who's Silk the Shocker's son, Master P's nephew, well-known 224. He's playing really good. And they have UCA Santa Barbara commit Colt Keat, who's a steal for Santa Barbara. He's a Pac-12 level.
I love him. I love him.
Like, some of the Pac-12s, sorry, I don't know what you guys were thinking. Maybe you think you're going to get them like in the portal later on or something, but
right.
Really so again, there's a bunch of names, and we'll continue to talk about these guys in the In the Paint show as the season progresses. But there's a bunch of names people should know about across the country. We mentioned quite a bit of them here, especially the younger guys. We want to always keep our eye out. But some of the teams, as we wrap up, we're a little upset because out west, their opponents didn't really tell them about a positive test till after they play. So it's just like that. A couple coaches got real pissed off because here what happened to one team. Yeah, they scouted the opponent, right? Because they played later in the evening, and again, we're talking about tournaments, so they were already there. So they get to their game the following day, which is the second round game, which would be the quarterfinals, and they're saying, "Wait a minute, this is not the lineup that they used yesterday at all," like 3 or 4 different guys. So after they play the game, so after they go and they, hey, coach, what happened to, number 1, number 7, number whatever, number 12? Then the coach was like nonchalantly like, oh yeah, they tested positive. We sent them home and they never came back to the game. And they're like, oh, like the coaches were like, why didn't you tell us? They didn't know if they were going to drop out of the tournament or if they would have played the game. They just wanted the opportunity to make that decision on their own. Like, do we want to play against this team that has a positive or not? Because as you know, what happened was, sure enough, 2 or 3 days later, the other team that played got a positive test. So that's how it's spread, because people are not telling, they're not being forthright about like, oh yeah, with 2 or 3 kids, we just sent them home. They had a positive test. So there was a lot of teams
nonchalant, like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Again, people in different parts of the country have different views on it, and they were not happy. The team from California was not happy. This was not a team from California that did that. So, that's how it spread. Again, hopefully everybody's been okay. Now, as we go into this week, which is the first week of the new year, we do have games canceled in California, or postponed, I should say. A lot of top teams. Etiwanda's not playing. Sierra Canyon, I was going to check them out later this week against a good opponent. St. Joe's of Santa Maria, which is in the Central Coast, they're not playing. Those games are postponed. So games are postponed. So we'll see what happens. Looks like
same here. There's been some games postponed, and there's teams that are asking like, hey, So we have an opening here and opening there. And then, even talks around here is like, how long are we going to be able to play through the high school basketball season? So,
Wow. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with out west as well. Obviously, California is a little bit more, I guess, aware of all their COVID issues. Like they're going to jump, the school districts are going to jump on it real fast. They're obviously one of the most stringent when it comes to the guidelines or the COVID-19 policies. And we all know that. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be an interesting couple weeks. It's very, very fluid. Games are canceled, but they're supposed to be played later. But like you said, we're now on our third season where this has been affected. Obviously, in 1920, Duncanville was the favorite to win 6A, and that the Final Four never took place, right? So they won in what? 218, 219, 220. They didn't get to play in 221. They won it again.
Austin Westlake.
Yeah, so we're already on the third season where this is kind of affecting everything. And in 220, 221, Las Vegas and Nevada didn't even have a season. So
that's right.
Obviously, California did. It was a very short, late season that happened way after Texas was done. So we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you guys up to date and informed. But until next time, thank you guys for tuning in to the Ball is Life in the Paint show presented by Ball is Life. We're going to get out of here now. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to head once again to shop.ballislife.com. Check out all of our gear. We have a lot of cool lines. Make sure you go cop yourself some of the gear. Once again, that's shop.ballislife.com. Check out the Fab 50 on ballislife.com, and also on our .com, you can find all of our various podcasts. Make sure to, hit the subscribe button, tell us what you like, hit the notification button,
Please
give us some feedback. There's some other cool podcasts out there. Unapologetic, Buckets and Breakdown, Noble and Roos. It's in the game. So there's a lot of things to choose from. So we appreciate you guys listening to the In the Paint show. But until the next episode, Ani and Ronnie are signing off.
Peace.